Go. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Costa. I work for the Rhode Island DEM Division of Coastal Resources. This is the third workshop for the USDA SPRS grant program. With me today is Robert Ballou from the Director's Office, Jim O'Connor and Olivia Chakowski from Coastal Resources as well. Sorry about that. There is no members of the public here at URI, so pretty much the entire audience is via Zoom. There's about 7 participants, which is great, and we're glad to see that you can make it this evening. The purpose of this workshop here is to go over the draft regulations for the USDA SPRS grant program. I'm going to be going through some background information with a PowerPoint presentation, and as well as a link to our draft regulatory document. We are looking this evening for feedback and for any information that you may have to give us in order to better draft these regulations. Everyone can hear me okay? I assume, correct?
I can hear you.
Great.
Yes.
Perfect. Just a quiet crowd. I'm not used to not having anyone in the audience directly here in front of me, so it's a little bit different. So getting started here. Meetings participation, just a couple of rules. This is, a virtual meeting. I've unmuted you all just for the sake of open discussion, and you can unmute yourselves. If you have any problems with that, just use the chat feature. If you'd like to make a comment, just raise your hand and I can address you, and you can address everyone else here in the web meeting. The meeting facilitator, myself, I'll unmute one participant at a time, but I've already done that, as I had said, just to keep things a little bit open. I think it's probably easier that way. Any comments in the chat will not necessarily be recognized, but it was a small group. We can kind of facilitate that if you like. I'll try to pay attention to the chat participation in this as well. So starting off with just some overview and purpose. So here today to talk about the USDA SPRS grant program. This program was provided by the USDA to provide background as a block grant to state agencies like the Rhode Island DEM. And the purpose of that is directly to defray expenses incurred by seafood processing facilities, including at-sea processors, vessels, dealers, in preparation for and preventing exposure to the COVID-19 pandemic. So just in the way of background, again, some things we've already gone through. This grant opportunity was presented to the DEM on September 23rd, 2021. We've successfully applied for that grant program. We've held our first workshop on October 28th. The second workshop was held on October 11th. And the grant application deadline was November 22nd. And as I had said, we had successfully submitted that grant. And the third workshop is tonight. And this is more of a regulatory discussion to go over some of the draft regulations that we have pertaining to this program. So some basic timelines, some that we've already reached and some that we're going to be going out into the future with. As I had said, the grant was due by November 22nd. The grant was awarded sometime in late January 2022. And right now we're kind of in this regulatory process. We're on target as far as our timelines are concerned with this particular project. Just one moment. And we're going to be going on into the future, hopefully opening up an application period based upon our filing of regulations in April of 2022. Followed directly by evaluation, appeals, and taxation review into May, and then hoping to get payments issued into June of 2022. This is a pretty aggressive timeline, but I think it's a relatively simple process and procedure that we've kind of perfected at the DEM over the past couple of months and years with some of the other similar programs that we've administered. So, some regulatory highlights. So what I've done here in this presentation is taken some of the regulations in which was all emailed to you in the notice of this meeting and I can bring up the entire body of regulations as well. But what I've done is kind of picked out some of the key points or elements that we're looking to get comments on. I can bounce back and forth between the regulations themselves. If you'd like to see them on the screen, just let me know. But this particular section is our definition section. And I thought the three key points that we really like to talk about is the definition of processor, at-sea processor, and dealer. These were really handed down to us by the USDA as far as the grant program is concerned. So we just kind of reiterated these definitions here in our regulatory definition as well. I can take this slide by slide. If anyone had any comments on this or had any feedback, please join in the discussion or conversation, and we can kind of take this section by section if you like. Is that okay with you, Bob?
Yeah, just have people jump in if they have.
Yeah. So seeing no necessarily questions about this, I think it's pretty straightforward. Like I had said, these definitions were kind of handed down to us throughout the USDA program and the grant application process. I think it's interesting that we're including at-sea processors, in which I think a couple of vessels here in Rhode Island would fall under this particular definition, which is great. Moving on just really briefly into section 220.7, which we discussed the sub-allocations. So in the first two workshops, we had discussed the 5 or 6 different points in which the USDA was going to allow us to reimburse expenditures. We in Rhode Island, based upon the feedback of the previous 2 workshops, applied for the workplace safety measures, market pivots, and retrofitting facilities categories. So this will be essentially what you all will be able to apply into, and I'm going to go into the definitions of these 3 sub-allocations as well. You can see that we've evenly broken down the entire $342,000 allotment into these 3 subcategories. And keep in mind that upon completion of the appeals process, once everything is said and done, and I'm referring to part B here at the end, we will be evenly distributing any remaining funds throughout each of these categories. So everything is proportionately distributed to other categories that, have qualifying applicants. It's the essentially fairest and most equitable way to do it. Essentially, this allows us to spend all the money that it's applied for anyway. And then, of course, redistribute any funds that weren't used in any one category to another one that may need some. So some eligibility criteria. This particular, section 20.8 lists the draft regulations that we have. Something to keep in mind here in part 4. So these expenditures must have been made between January 27th, 2020 and December 31st, 2021. So any expenditures made outside of that window would not be allowed for reimbursement or applied for here. This is mostly some standardized language as far as regulations. You can't be disbarred from receiving federal funds or not on the federal do not pay list. Also important to note that aquaculturists, including holding a seafood dealer's license issued by the DEM or seafood wholesaler license issued by the DEM, are not eligible into this program. There are other programs that may be more applicable to aquaculturists. So this particular section, I believe, is relatively cut and dry as well. And at the outset of this, I'm going to bring up the body of regulations so we can go through those and you can see the, entire draft reg in its, PDF format as well. So just one thing I just wanted to highlight again, just to reiterate that, eligible beneficiaries can seek reimbursements only for the costs incurred between this time period. That's a very important factor in this particular program. So as I had said, we applied for 3 of the 6 categories of expenses, and you can see those 3 categories of expenses here. These are workplace safety measures, market pivots, and retrofitting facilities. We are very anxious to get any feedback from you all on the definition of these and to see, if there's any comment on these particular things. But just to sum this up, workplace safety measures would include, PPE, hand sanitizers, washing stations, air filters, thermometers, cleaning supplies, or similar items directly related to protecting staff and employees from COVID-19 or exposure to COVID-19. Market pivots. I found this one to be personally rather interesting, but these are things that a business might have done. They're included, but not necessarily limited to transition or transition to virtual or online sales. So for example, if your particular business dovetailed from an in-person type scenario to an online marketplace, online platforms, online marketing, credit card processing, which, has come a long way in the advent of COVID-19, any supplies, signage, or similar items that would fall into the market pivot category. And one of the larger ones here is retrofitting facilities. And this is pretty much as you might think it is. Anything that you might have done to create safety situations in your facility, such as retrofitting for worker and safety, consumer safety, harvester vessels, onboard vessels processing to maximize open air activities, plexiglass, dividers, walk-up windows, heat lamps, any implements that you all have made to, again, protect your staff and your customers in a way that you retrofitted your facility. So in this section here, I'm just going to go directly to our regulation. I think it's going to be a little bit easier. I'm going to bring up that screen now. So starting here at the top, and again, this is going to be a little bit redundant, but I just wanted to let you all see the body of regulations. So currently, we have our general purpose category. This is just summing up the purpose of the program, authority and applicable application, which essentially states that, the department can effectuate, this in the state of law, goals, and our policies. Here you see the at-sea processor definition along with the dealer and processor definition, which we've already gone over. Some of these findings I'm just going to kind of gloss over. These are a summary of the program itself that kind of goes over many of the items that we had already talked about in some of the background. This is the amount total that we are applying for, that we've already applied for rather. Moving on into kind of the meat and potatoes of it all, these are our administrative fees. The DEM is going to be taking a $28,662 administrative fee. I can say that's a very meager fee that will probably just cover our costs, but we want to essentially maximize to you all the benefits and payment that you're going to get into this program. So it's important to us to, let's just say, minimize our administrative fee. Again, the sub-allocations that I had already gone over that are equally distributing the entire $342,000 minus, the initial amount minus the administrative fee. These are broken out evenly into the categories. The eligibility criteria. I've highlighted a couple of things here just to bring everyone's attention. You must have held a seafood dealer's license issued by the department and or the wholesale seafood dealer license issued by the Department of Health during some or all of the period between the eligibility, window here, so to speak, of when you had the expenditures. Something to keep in mind. Again, this eligibility window when you made the expenditures here, January 27th, December 2021. These are a lot of the things that I've already gone over in the presentation here in this section. Again, the categories of expenses that we've just gone over.
I would go back up.
Sure.
Keep going. Highlight number 6.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up, Bob. Thank you. This is a section that we thought that was very important to put in, and just so everyone understands, to apply for this program, you must have on file and be able to produce upon request valid records or documentations, either receipts, invoices, purchase orders, something verifying your application and the line items in that application. So you're going to have all of the documentation in order if we were to request it. I'm going to go a little bit in section 20.11 into the audit procedures section and go over that a little bit more. But should we request these items or should you be chosen for audit, you will have to have all of these documents verifying your expenditures on file. And that's something, again, we're hoping to get your feedback on in any case. Thanks, Bob, for pointing that out. I appreciate that. The three categories of expenses, as we've already gone over, these dovetail into our application to the USDA. And this is what we felt was going to best benefit Rhode Island based upon your feedback in previous workshops. So the application regulations itself are pretty cut and dry. We will provide applications. You'll be able to drop off the applications to one of these three locations, similar to the CARES Act and CAFAP programs that we've already gone over. Applications must be completed in full, must be notarized, and individual processing facilities of vessels may apply separately for reimbursement. Processors only may apply once for each location or vessel. I think that's probably pretty important to note and something that may apply to some of you on the call. The submission deadline will be a hard deadline, and you'll be available to submit your applications again at one of these three offices. The application period we've left open here because upon filing of regulations, we want to make sure that we fit a reasonable time period for you all to gather your documents and, beforehand and kind of do any homework that you might have. So we're anticipating a 15-day application period beginning sometime probably towards the end of March and ending towards the very end of March, early April, and that's to stay consistent with our timeline. Required information certification and documentation. So again, verification the applicant had a seafood dealer's license issued by the department or a seafood wholesaler license issued by the Department of Health during some or all the period of the application, the eligibility period rather. You will self-certify that you've incurred the expenditures prepared to prevent COVID-19 during this period for the three workplace categories. But again, you'll have to have this documentation as a backup if we were to request it, or you would go into an audit. A lot of this is pretty much standardized. We had discussed this in the previous workshops, but we're going to be working in partnership with the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. That's similar to the CARES Act and the CAFAP programs. They will be physically cutting the checks for the DEM in this program. That's a very, very helpful thing for us. It would be even more administratively burdensome if we were to take that on as well. So the evaluation process will be pretty straightforward. Upon the close of the application, process, a team from the DEM will convene and go over all the applications. We're going to do that in as an expeditious way possible for review of all these applications. We're going to, draw upon any information available at boating and licensing, the Department of Health, to check everyone's valid, licensure. I think this is a very important section here to note as well, that as a part of the evaluation process, we may require applicants to submit copies of records documentation that verify eligible expenses for which the applicant is seeking reimbursement. We put that in there because, if we happen to find something that we have a question with, or we, simply cannot answer, we want to make sure that you guys have the backup and documentation necessary that you're supposed to have. And we want to be able to just fairly and equitably review these applications as best as possible. There will be an audit component into this program. different and divergent from the CARES Act and CAFAP programs in which we had data available via SAFES and dealer reporting information. This application process is different there because we don't have that information. We will be randomly targeting 10% of all applications received for audit. And if you are selected for an audit, there's a procedure here outlined in these regulations that you will be contacted. You'll have 15 days to respond, and then you'll have to bring in all of your documentation necessary to back up your application. That can be submitted here into these same 3 offices. If you were to fail to respond to an audit request, there'll be an automatic denial of the application. An audited application found to have sufficient records and documentations that verify the eligible expenses for which the applicant is seeking reimbursement will be processed along with any other part of the applications, just in the previous part 12 of this document. So it'll be treated as if it was not a problem. However, if an audited application would have insufficient records of documentation that fail to verify the expenses in which you're claiming in your application, essentially that will be issued a letter of denial. And the applicant, of course, has the ability, to appeal to this as well, in which I'll go over that in a subsequent section here. But the awarded notification section here in this reg is pretty straightforward as well. This is essentially detailing the $114,000 for each subcategory that had previously gone over. This details essentially the process in which we will sub-allocate or reallocate if there is a percentage shortfall that applies to each claim. Again, similar to CARES Act and CAFAP, that we have applications that supersede the entire amount, we're going to have to essentially work by a percentage factor to evenly distribute these things to the total amount that we have. Moving on, again, I had mentioned appeals. If they're in the case of a denial, there is a section for any appeals. This is a pretty important section here that you would have 15 days after receipt, of a denial that you would have to appeal. This process is pretty well documented here and straightforward through our legal process, in which appeals would be filed here at the Division of Department of Legal Services at 235 Promenade Street, the DEM headquarters. So hopefully everything goes well and we get to the end. We have final awards and issuance of payments. Like I had said, that we're very fortunate to work with the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, which will be physically cutting the checks to this program. And that's detailed here in this section C. And once we're done giving out all of these, applications and all of the processes gone through, we'll terminate the program. I really would like to open up the floor to anyone on the call that would like to make any comments, having any questions at all about this particular regulation, in which we're really looking to get feedback on, so we can start this process. One thing to note that I had kind of not mentioned earlier on is that we have essentially 2 different avenues that we can walk down to file these regulations. One will be under emergency action, and that's a much quicker process. I think we have good grounds to do so here in this case, given this is a COVID-19 related issue. However, it's going to move along the process very quickly, and we want to be sure that you all are prepared with all of your documentation to, once the application period is open, respond to these applications in a timely manner that's going to benefit you. The other option is to go through the traditional regulatory pathway of filing regulations, which we would have to possibly go to public comments. It would be a 30-day waiting period. It's a little bit more of a, let's just say, untimely type process, but it may be more beneficial to you all, allowing you time to kind of gather up your information documents if you were to need that. And again, if there's a time crunch and something like that from anyone here, we'd like to hear back from you all just so we can understand the best pathway forward to administer this program that's going to benefit you. So I think that's all I really have to say here tonight. But again, I'm hoping that some of you might chime in and ask any questions that you might have, or, give us any insights to this regulation that we might craft it in a way that's most beneficial. Did anyone have any comments?
There's no comments. Is everyone comfortable going forward?
Yeah. Chris Lee, yes, we will absolutely keep you posted when the application becomes available. This will be put out via the listserv at Marine Fisheries and at the Coastal Resources Office listserv as well. So if you've found this meeting, we're going to be advertising, so to speak, or reaching out as far as communication and every step of this process along the same avenues. So I would assume that you would get this information just as easily as you got the information for this meeting. Got it, Chris. Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments? It's relatively quiet here in the room. Megan, did you have any questions? I can just go one by one if you'd like.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask what Chris Lee asked. Do you have an idea when you think that that the applications are going to go out in the next week or so?
So we're going to have to file these regulations. Subsequent to filing the regulations, the application period will start. Going back just very briefly to my PowerPoint presentation. Which I think that you can all see now. Our timeline essentially is going to work like this, where we're expecting the application period to open up sometime early to mid-April is my anticipation. I think that addresses your question, right?
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Great. Did you have any comments or any concerns about the regulatory document? Or, I think it's pretty straightforward, but it's kind of new to everybody. So I want to make sure that everyone's comfortable with that. But I don't see really any comments coming in here. Did you have anything to add, Megan?
No, I think I'm good. We'll just wait till the notifications and the application goes out and take it from there.
Excellent. So, Adam, did you have any, Adam Silks, did you have any questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none?
No, it was pretty straightforward. Thanks for doing the presentation, Dan. I think Jane's on the call too, and we'll get together tomorrow, talk about it tonight, and if we have stuff for it, we'll get back to you then.
Sure. If anyone on this call or in general has any questions about this program, I'm always available, at my office, and Bob Ballou via email as well.
Thanks, Dan.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering how long you'll be taking comments on the regs, and if you would remember to put the link in the chat to the regs.
Sure, I can put the link in the chat now to the regs. It was also sent out with a meeting notice to this meeting, but I'd be happy to email it to you as well. So dependent on how we file the regulations will depend on the comment period. This is a workshop that we're looking to get some comments on this body of regulation, as soon as possible. If we were to file in an emergency fashion, I don't believe, Bob, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there will be a chance for a comment period, correct?
Well, I think the key is we have two options. We can either move forward and file these as emergency regulations, and that could be done very soon, perhaps within the week. That would preclude any further opportunity for public comment, but it would afford you all an earlier time frame for applying for and receiving funds. If there was a preference to go the standard regulatory route, we would put these out to public notice, 30-day public notice. There would be that much more opportunity to review and comment, but it would push out the application period and the opportunity to receive funds much longer, at least a month or two longer. And so that's a key issue that we're looking for feedback on tonight.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I certainly would be in favor in getting this moved forward as quickly as possible.
That's the general sentiment that I believe that we've picked up in the previous workshops as well, is that, these businesses have incurred, significant expenses as it relates to COVID-19. And again, this is a wonderful grant opportunity for the state of Rhode Island and for you all to get cash reimbursement to those expenses. So, money's important to everyone. We just want to be sure that we're administering this program as expeditiously and as beneficially, to you all as possible. Did anyone have any other comments, questions? I see Jason Jarvis is on the line. Jason, did you have any glaring things that stuck out to you that you might want to point out to us?
All right, I got you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, again, I think timing is everything. You put this out a couple of months and we're at the beginning of the fishing season for most of us, which then puts a lot more on our plates pretty quickly. I think an emergency action also would just get this rolling faster. I know a lot of people are, including myself, are still reeling from the effects of this whole COVID thing over the past 2 years.
Well, sounds like we kind of have a general consensus here with the people on the call. So we read you loud and clear. We'll do the best that we can, move forward in that fashion.
Very good.
All right. Thanks, Jay. I appreciate it. If there's no other glaring comments or questions, I would close the workshop. I would thank you all very, very much for your participation. We appreciate it. We will look forward to putting a listserv notice out as well to keep you all abreast of, our kind of progress here in filing these regs, and then in any subsequent application process as it comes down, and we'll try to go as fast as we can. But thank you all very much. Gina, can I ask you a question? I don't have a link necessarily on a website for these draft regulations. Could I get your email address to email them to you directly?
Yep, I absolutely can drop that right into the chat for you.
Beautiful. I can email them to you right now if you'd
Yeah,
like.
because I can't find this. I was forwarded to me and I just can't seem to find any way to get to them. Thank you.
Understood. But if you drop that in the chat before I close out the call, I can email it to you in the next 30 seconds.
Okay, it should be there.
Beautiful. And it is. All right. So thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. And if you have any other questions, you know where to find me. We'll be happy to help you out. Thanks again, and have a nice evening.
Thanks, Dan.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.